but today we want to focus on Ethiopia. I have talked about Ethiopia in the past. And by the way, before I introduce my guest, we did a live show on Ethiopia in June. And at the time, I had a guest by the name of Miss Hamela Aregawi, and she talked to us about what's been happening in Ethiopia. And on that day, I tried so hard to have an opposing view as well. Actually, before that day, but I was hoping that on that day we would have an opposing view, but I never heard back from a number of people that I had contacted. Hi, greetings to you guys. I see your comments. Thank you so much. But believe it or not, it was that same day that Miss Meaza said that she would like to come on the show to give an opposing view. Now, Miss Meaza will tell you that her and I have been going back and forth since June 4th, if I remember correctly, mainly because she's been wanting to come on the show since then. And I said no, because I want opposing view, just like I had wanted when I had Miss Hamela, but then it didn't happen. So because I am not from Ethiopia, it's really hard trying to make sense of everything that is happening. And also because I have never been to Ethiopia, which is terrible. As an African, I should, visit as many African countries as possible. Ethiopia definitely is one of my dream destinations, one of the countries that I'm hoping to visit someday. So because I am not from Ethiopia and I'm trying to make sense of what's happening in Ethiopia, not just me, everybody that watches my show. That's why I wanted to have both sides in the room when we talk about what is happening in Ethiopia. Please keep in mind, Ms. Meaza, that my audience, they are from different African countries, and we are all really interested in what is happening in Ethiopia, mainly because we believe that as Africans, we are all one. We have more in common than our differences. And so if something is happening in Ethiopia, it's affecting us as well. Not to talk about the fact that Ethiopia is the second most populated African country. It's a big country. So whatever is happening in Ethiopia is affecting us all. So today I'm hoping that you will shed light on the opposing view. We are trying to understand what is happening. And I have told her that, because I am not from Ethiopia, I would be so grateful to go through the comments to have people comment on what she says and also send in their questions. I do have some questions for you as well, but I like to start out just like I did with Ms. Hamila by giving you 10 minutes just to hear your view about what has been happening in Ethiopia. We've been talking since June. This is August. June, July, August has been a very long time. So hopefully people would remember everything that we talked about in June with Hamela as well. So without further ado, because I want to keep this short and sweet, not to bore anyone, just so people remember what we talk about. Miss Meaza, first of all, let me say your name correctly. Meaza Gebremedhin. Did I get it right? I did. Awesome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're calling from. You are muted at your end. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Adeola. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Meaza Gebremedhin. I am coming in live from Virginia. I am from Tigray. Tigray is the northernmost part of Ethiopia. I wanted to come to your show primarily because there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation with regards to the ongoing state-sponsored genocide that has engulfed Tigray since November 4th of 2020. I believe your audience deserves to have a balanced information. Your audience has the right to know what actually is happening on the ground. So due to the misinformation and disinformation that was broadcasted through your show, I wanted to come and clarify on certain issues. I asked to have the same kind of opportunity that was granted to your previous guest, which is not to share the platform with opposing views or anything like that, but to have the time to explain what's happening from the perspective of a Tigrayan, a person who has been at the receiving end of the ongoing genocide for over 21 months now. So thank you so much for accepting the request and providing a platform. As I said, I do come from Tigray. I was born and raised in Tigray, but also lived in different parts of Ethiopia. I, like so many other Tigrayans in the diaspora, have been directly affected by the ongoing state-sponsored genocide. I have lost family members, and I haven't heard from most of my family members, but the ones I heard of, a lot of them have died due to the endless suffering that has been inflicted upon them by the Ethiopian government and its allies from Eritrea. Some of my family members have died due to the state-sponsored and man-made famine. Some of them have been gang raped. Some of them have been killed by members of the military army from Ethiopia. So it's at the backdrop of this that I am here to talk about the ongoing state-sponsored genocide that has been happening by the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government. As I said, since November 4th, Ethiopia and Eritrea waged a genocidal war upon the people of Tigray. Since then, according to very credible resources that were published by universities in Europe, over 500,000 people have already died in Tigray. Over 120,000 young women and girls have been gang raped by military men. We very well know that famine is being used as a war tactic in addition to gender-based violence. So we have been calling for unfettered and unrestricted humanitarian corridor to be granted to international humanitarian aid agencies so that people could have access to medicine, to food, and be saved. We have been asking for cessation of hostilities. We have been asking for an independent investigation that would be led by an impartial body, particularly the UN. We have also been calling for an inclusive national dialogue so that political differences within Ethiopia could be resolved through peace talks and not war bullets like the Ethiopian government seems to believe. Nonetheless, despite our efforts, the Ethiopian government continues to show that it's not willing and ready for peace talks, but that they want to starve the people of Tigray to subjugation. And as an extension of that policy, they have put Tigray under a complete siege without any means of communicating our family members back home. So there still is no internet, there is still no banking services that the people could use to save their lives. There still is no any ground or flight access to the people of Tigray. So as a result, our family members, over around 10 million of them in Tigray, are suffering at the hands of the Ethiopian and the Eritrean state.
Wow, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your view. Thank you for giving all these updates. So I want to start real quick. First of all, about how the war started. So the reports that we have is that the Tigrayan army attacked the Ethiopian military base. What do you have to say about this?
First of all, when you talk about a genocide, I don't think there should ever be any
I
excuse, any
didn't say
justification.
genocide. I
No,
didn't
no, I'm
mention.
talking about genocide. So when we discuss a genocide, I don't think there is any ground that would justify it. No matter how it starts, a genocide is a genocide, it's a crime, and everyone should work towards ending it. Having said
I'm
that,
not
how
sure
the
you
war
heard my
began.
question. I'm not
No,
sure you
I'm
heard my
about to answer
question.
your question
Oh,
if you.
okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
how the war on Tigray began is not only shouldn't be limited to what happened on November 4th. There has been events that led up to it, starting with cutting transportation that connects Tigray to the mainland, the fact that the Ethiopian government didn't do anything to fix that problem, the fact that foreign investors that wanted to invest in Tigray were blocked in Addis Ababa, the fact that over 60,000 Tigrayans who were in the Middle East and wanted to return back to Ethiopia following the pandemic eruption were denied access by the Ethiopian government and they were labeled as terrorist people. The fact that the Ethiopian government had cut budget. This happened all prior to November 4th, and these developments are really important in understanding how the war actually began. Having said all of this, on November 4th, the Ethiopian government knew the world would give more attention to what was happening in the US, which is the presidential election. So by taking the advantage of that incident, the Ethiopian government waged a war against the people of Tigray, particularly the Tigray government that was elected by the people on November 2020. So this happened because the Ethiopian government wanted to centralize power. They wanted to dismantle the multinational federalism that has put Ethiopia intact together for over 30 years. So there has been developments that were already brewing, and Tigray was already being encircled militarily. There was huge military movement from Eritrea and Amhara, and the European Union had already issued a statement regarding this, urging all actors to really stay calm and not to engulf into war. But despite all these calls, the
Mhm.
Ethiopian government waged the war against the people of Tigray on November 4th.
Okay, so Miss Miaza, I'm not sure you heard my question, or it's either that or you purposely decided not to answer my question.
I
So for
actually
those
did.
who are not from Ethiopia, the Tigrayan military attacked the Ethiopian military base and killed some soldiers overnight. That was not the only thing that led to the war, but that was one of the things that led to the war. That was actually when the war started, when soldiers were killed by the Tigrayan forces. Tigrayans are also Ethiopians. So it's like one ethnic group, correct me if I'm wrong, now attacked a military base and killed other ethnic groups on a military base. So I'm asking you about that particular incident because for some reason you jumped into massacre. The massacre, according to you, happened after the military base was attacked. Now I'm talking about the reason why the war started, and I'm trying to hear your opinion about it. A lot of Ethiopians are saying that the Tigrayans were the ones that started the war, started in the sense that they attacked a military base and then said that they are the victims. And I just want to hear your opinion about this. Is it true, first of all? Well, it is true. We saw the videos and pictures. It's not denied that the Tigrayan forces attacked a military base. I'm not taking any sides. Hold
Oh,
on.
well, you are.
No,
You
no,
actually
hold
are.
on.
You're saying
I'm not
it's
taking
true.
any
No,
side,
no, you are,
but I
because you
like to
just
hear
said
your
it is
opinion.
true. I don't
Right,
think as a
Miss
journalist
Miss
it's really
Miaza,
to say what is true and
I'm
what's not true.
I'm I'm the one doing the interview. I did notice that
Um,
you did not answer that question. You went into talking about genocide. I'm asking you about how the war started. Do you mind talking about the attack by the Tigrayan forces on the Ethiopian military base? Do you mind addressing that?
I actually addressed it, but I can emphasize if you would like me to. I did give you the things that happened prior to November 1st because it's really important. As I said, it helps you to understand why certain
Are
things
you
were
saying
done.
those things justified the Tigrayan forces
I didn't say that.
killing? Okay, so
Mm-mm.
I'm wondering why you're referring to that without answering the attack on the military base.
Because at the core of the conflict that's happening is there is an ideological battle. There is an ideological war amongst the Ethiopian government and the people of Tigray, and that is the Ethiopian government, particularly Abiy Ahmed and his regime, wanted to have a unitary Ethiopia, a type of governance that denies nation and nationalities the right to be self-governed and self-administered. The people of Tigray want the right, the democratic and constitutional right of self administration. What that means is we want to have the right to elect our representatives, our governors, our politicians. So on November 2020, the Ethiopian government tried to topple up the regional government of Tigray, a government that was elected by the people of Tigray. So they tried to do that by fabricating this narrative of the people of Tigray or their defense forces attacking the Northern Command. Just so you know, the Northern Command, majority of them are Tigrans. Members of the Northern Command, majority of them are Tigrans. On November 3rd, midnight, there was an attempt to forcefully and unconstitutionally topple up the elected government of Tigray. So the government had no any other option but to defend because there was an attempt, an attack on our constitutional right, self determination. There was an attempt to subjugate us. as a result of that, the people of Tigray had to defend their constitutional right of self-administration. That's what happened. But that is not really the important factor. Is you have to look at the bigger picture. Why did the Ethiopian government, the Eritrean government, wanted to start this conflict? That is what people should understand, not really the specific actions that happened. And if you want to understand that particular reason, you have to look into what happened once Abiy Ahmed assumed power. What happened to the people of Tigray? What were the policies, the narratives that were being pushed by the Ethiopian government and their allies? If you're not willing to understand those things, then I'm afraid you will have only a surface level understanding of the conflict, and you may not be able to contribute positively towards ending the suffering of innocent people.
So just to clarify, you said that the story was made up. The military base was not attacked, right?
I don't know. I don't know where you're hearing only certain things. I'm saying there are developments that took place prior to November 1st. These are developments that clearly showed the intent of the Ethiopian government, the Eritrean government, to topple up the duly elected government of Tigray in a such manner they wanted to take away our constitutional right and democratic right of self-determination. You cannot really only look at what happened November 4th. If you want to understand why the people of Tigray have been at the receiving end of this level of violence, you have to see what took place prior to November 4th.
Okay. Also, is it true that for 2 years that the Ethiopian government had been trying to negotiate with the Tigrayan elders for 2 years to come to a peaceful agreement? Is this true? Please let me hear your opinion about this.
So once Abiy Ahmed assumed power, he was not elected. He was nominated by the coalition political party that administered Ethiopia for over 30 years, called EPRDF. One of the things he did was he abruptly dissolved that coalition of political governance. TPLF, which is a representative of the people of Tigray, was one member of that coalition party. So when he did that, the people of Tigray saw what was coming, and what was coming is the desire of forming a unitary state. So because of the people of Tigray, through their political representative, disagreed. They said there has to be a system that allows nation and nationalities to be represented by the people they voted for. And to that effect, the people of Tigray, through their political representative, rejected the notion of dissolving the APRDF. They rejected the notion that the Ethiopian government wanted to unconditionally postpone the elections. So to facilitate, to find some kind of solution to all of this, there were efforts that were pushed by the Ethiopian government, that were pushed by the Tigray government. The Tigray government was calling for an inclusive national dialogue whereby political representatives from all nations and nationalities will come together and discuss ways on resolving that political tension. The Ethiopian government, on the other hand, had handpicked people that were sent to Tigray to intimidate the people of Tigray into accepting the terms of the Ethiopian government. This is what is being framed as an effort or as an elderly effort that was laid by the Ethiopian government.
I see. Do the Tigrayans want to have their own government separated from the Ethiopian government?
What the people of Tigray, myself included, want is peace and security. We don't want to be hunted simply because of our ethnic background. We want to have access to food. We want to have access to internet, to our money in the banks. We want to have access to security and stability. We want the siege that has been imposed by the Ethiopian government on our people to be lifted. We want all invading forces to leave our land, including Western Tigray, including northern parts of Tigray, particularly Europe, which is currently under the illegal occupation of the Eritrean forces. This is what we want.
Definitely, you want peace. I agree with that. But the reason I asked my question is I do remember that the Tigrayans had an election and elected their own leaders separately from the Ethiopian national election. That's why I'm asking that do the Tigrayans want to be their own country separate from Ethiopia?
So, according to, I don't know how familiar you are with the Ethiopian constitution, but according to the Ethiopian constitution, every 5 years, Ethiopia is supposed to have national, regional, and municipal election. So, what was supposed to happen in 2019 or I'm sorry if I forget the years, but is that Ethiopia was due to have its national, regional, and municipal election. Ethiopians were supposed to vote for their local representatives, their municipal representatives, and their federal government representatives. So according to that constitutional framework, Ethiopians were supposed to have, including Tigrayans, were supposed to have election at the regional level and at the national level. So the national election was meant in order, to form a government that would administer the entire country. And the regional elections are supposed to form a government that will administer each and every region within the Ethiopian Federation. So the Ethiopian government, of course, like I said earlier, used COVID-19 as an excuse and erode democracy, and they unilaterally postponed the election. But Tigray still had the constitutional right to carry out its regional elections to elect people that would administer the region and be representatives of the region in the federal structure. So we went ahead and had our election, and it was peaceful. There was no any dramatic increase in COVID-19. Over 95% of the electorate voted for the TPLF, and a government was formed.
I see. But would the Tigrayans like to be a country of their own or not?
I am here in the US. I cannot decide for the people of Tigray that are on the ground, but what would help us find an answer to that is in the siege, in the conflict, in the genocide, and let the people have a referendum and see what they choose.
Considering that you have your own military.
We do have a military that was established because the Ethiopian government and Eritrean government waged a war against us, and we had to defend ourselves.
So your military was never in existence until the war started?
We didn't have a military. We did had a regional militias, which is apparent everywhere in Amhara and Oromia region across the country. We'd have militia groups.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about reports of child soldiers, people being forced to fight to get humanitarian aid? Is there any truth to this in the Tigrayan region?
Again, this is a narrative that has been pushed by the Ethiopian government and its allies in order to evade responsibility. And nonetheless, what I and every Tigrayan person will tell you is we want an independent investigation that would look into all allegations, including allegations surrounding child soldiers. We don't have anything to hide. And if the Tigray government is to be found responsible for such kind of things, they will be held accountable. But even themselves, they have been expressing their willingness and readiness for an independent investigation. Yet again, it's the Ethiopian government that continues to refuse and block any efforts of impartial, independent investigation.
I see. I'm going to be letting in questions from the audience in a few minutes, but for those who may be joining us, I had spoken with Hamela Arigawi previously, shedding a light to the other side of the story. So if you see me asking her these questions, it's because they're coming from, having heard from the other side and trying to hear from her side of the story as well. That's why I will ask questions like, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Do you mind shedding light a bit on the role of the diasporan Ethiopians in the diaspora on the ongoing war? I do have a number of questions on that, but first of all, you are also in the diaspora. Do you mind shedding light on the role of the Ethiopian diaspora on what's happening right now in Ethiopia?
Sure. So as a Tigrayan myself, I came here for school, for studies. My plan was to go back home upon the completion of my studies and contribute towards the betterment of my society. That dream has been shattered because of the ongoing genocide. I don't have a
When
place
did
to
you
go
leave
home.
Ethiopia?
Well, I was last in Ethiopia August of 2019, and I came here for study. So as I said, I wanted to go back home once I finished school, but now I cannot go back home because my home has been ravaged by war. So a lot of people like myself and those who were born and raised here, they woke up to the horrors of the genocide on November 4th. So a lot of them didn't know what to do. So we all came together, particularly members of the Tigray community. We all came together to raise awareness about what our family members were experiencing in the dark. So we have been doing, I would say, quite an amazing job regarding, despite the fact that we're historically and marginalized group of people, we have been able to raise awareness about the suffering of our people. On the other hand, there are a lot of Ethiopians who have access to power, to finance, connections that tried to, paint an alternative fact of what's happening. They harass us, they bully us everywhere. I myself have, there has been an assassination attempt against my safety when I was leading a protest, simply because I called for the end of the genocide, simply because I asked for peace. But at the same time, it's really important to understand that although the genocide is happening in Tigray, there are also different conflicts happening all across Ethiopia. So members of the Oromo community, the Kamant, the Agaw have also been very vocal and opposing against the Ethiopian government. So you would see different fractions of the Ethiopian community pushing different initiatives asking for the war to come to an end. But
And
unfortunately,
one of the things that the Ethiopians in diaspora have been doing is raising funds for.
mhm.
So, how's the money getting to the people? Is are the banks working? Like, what has that process been like?
I don't know. Maybe you should ask the Ethiopians. I'm Tigran. So as a Tigran, I know there has been different. We have different non-profit organizations. They have been leading resource mobilization efforts in order to provide humanitarian aid to those in Sudan. Mind you, we have over 70,000 people who made it out of the war zone before the Ethiopian government blocked the safe zone, the safe passage through Western Tigray, and they have made it to Sudan. So there is quite a dire need. This over 70,000 civilians are people that have been, went through a lot of traumatic experiences. So they do deserve a lot of humanitarian support. So the different nonprofit organizations we have been leading efforts to provide that support for them. So I may not be necessarily the right person to talk about that because I'm not in charge of any humanitarian organization, but I know for a fact that they have been doing quite an incredible job. Regarding the other Ethiopians, I wouldn't know. Maybe you should ask them.
You can always say, I don't have an answer to that. But when you say maybe you should ask Ethiopians or Tigrayans, I'm not sure what you mean or why you would say that, because that's why I have you on the show. But if you don't
No,
know
because
the
because
answer,
there are a lot of
that's
because there are a
understandable.
lot of
But
initiatives
you
to
can
meet
just say
raising
maybe you
money.
should ask Ethiopia or as
Because I am not
Tigrayan.
because I'm Tigran, so I'm
But
giving you answers as an
exactly,
Ethiopian.
you are
Mhm.
Tigrayan, and
Yeah.
you've talked about how family members have been affected, and that you have family members that are still back home. And I'm asking you how they're getting aids that is coming from here. And you're saying that I
Because
should
as I
ask
said,
Ethiopians and
as I
ask
said,
Tigrayans. Okay, your
no,
family members that are still in Tigray, how
no,
are you
I
getting
told
help
you.
to them?
Like I said, my family members that are in Ethiopia and Tigray do not have access to their banks. So even if I want to send money, they wouldn't be able to
And that's
access it.
exactly why I asked this question. There has been a lot of people raising funds in the diaspora. And I do know from some of the things that you have said in the past, for example, that banks are not working right now in
Mm.
Tigray. And I'm asking how, because a lot of money have been raised. And I'm asking, how's this money getting to the people, or how is help getting to the people?
No, so to answer to that question, I told you a lot of nonprofit organizations that were established in response to the genocide have been supporting and providing humanitarian aid to the refugees in Sudan. When it comes to Tigray, like everyone else, we don't have access. There is no
So
unfiltered
it's the
access. So
refugees
we're not
in
able to help
Sudan
people in
that
Tigray.
are being helped, not necessarily.
In Tigray, yeah.
Because you could have just
Not
said
only
that.
in
Because
Sudan, in Djibouti, there are also some in Kenya.
okay, you could have just said that. Um,
I don't think you should monitor what kind of answers I give. I think I should give an answer
I
that is
do,
appropriate
because
for the
when I ask
conversation.
questions, I'm expecting that you would answer. That's what you said you would do before coming on the show. But then I asked a reasonable question, and your answer was maybe you should go and ask the Ethiopian government or ask the
Because
Tigray.
I don't know what they're doing with the
No, no,
money.
it's fine.
I'm
I'm
not
not
going to
arguing
give
with
you
you.
answers for questions I
You
don't know.
you
So I
finally
would only
answered,
give you answers
which
for the
I
questions I
appreciate.
know.
You
Mhm.
finally answered, which I appreciate. The reason I asked that question, just so you know, is from speaking with some Ethiopians, there have been some allegations which I do not have any evidence for, that some Ethiopians in the diaspora, in the name of fighting for the people in the Tigray region, have raised a lot of money without necessarily getting it to the people. And I do know that the banks are not working. So I was thinking that you would help us clarify that and talk about how they're actually getting the money to the people. Nobody is trying to get rich off of victims. So that's why I asked you that question. But um, thank you for the response that you gave. I would move on.
I would actually love to address those issues you raised
Oh,
if you would allow me
now
to.
you want to? Please be my guest. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
because so the problem is, you ask questions and you have answers in your head. So
No,
when
I
I
do
don't
not
say
have
that,
answers in
that's
my
the
head. If
problem.
I
You
have
do.
answers, I won't
You
ask
actually
you.
do. You
So
actually
first
do.
you told me to go ask the Ethiopian or the Tigray. Second, you telling me I have
No,
answers in
because you're
my
telling me, because you just said it right now, Adeola. Let's be honest, we're adults here, right? You just said I asked you because I have heard this things, right? If you had
Yes,
asked said
I said
that,
I've heard things that I wanted you to
if you
clarify.
had said
But now
that,
you
if you
said
had
I
said that
have
ahead
answers
of
in my
time,
head.
I would have given you
Miss
clarification.
Miaza, I have never been to Ethiopia. I am not Ethiopia. I'm just trying to make sense. We're and not just me.
Unfortunately, you
We
have been fed
all,
with
and we don't take
misinformation.
any sides. We just want peace. Do
You
you know
don't
how
take
many
any
times I've
sides.
talked about let peace reign in Ethiopia? It's good to see you smile right now because the other time, I don't know, maybe you were upset or something, telling me maybe, I don't know, maybe you should ask the government and you have answers in your head. But now that you're smiling, I like to hear your answer if you don't mind clarifying this. And please keep in mind, I am not on any side. I'm not fighting with you. And it's like you're fighting with me or something, but I'm not. I'm not
I'm
fighting
not
with you.
fighting with
I
you,
just
actually.
wanted
I'm
to
not
hear your side.
fighting with you.
All right.
As
So
a
what do you have to
journalist,
say about that?
yeah, I'm not fighting with you. As a journalist, I'm asking you, not to fall into the traps of misinformation. Because if you had told me, I have heard this kind of rumors, and I know you guys have been mobilizing resources. Is the money going to this as it's being alleged? If you had
Exactly.
asked me that way, I would have answered it. But you didn't disclose the
Well, I was
information.
trying to. And then
No,
when
no,
you
you
said
didn't.
maybe you should
Anyways,
ask
we're
the,
here.
the
Let
Ethiopians.
me answer your
All right.
question.
Answer the
Anyways, let
question.
me answer your question. There has been a lot of allegations aimed at painting a picture that is more convenient for the Ethiopian government and that will be used to justify and cover up the genocide. As I told you, any allegation should be supported by evidence. If there is anybody that actually has a concrete evidence that money has been mobilized by the Tigray community in order to fuel a war, bring that evidence forward. Talk is cheap. People can say anything they want. If the Ethiopian government and its supporters do not have any problem to rape a 4 years old young girl, they wouldn't have a problem to fabricate this kind of narratives in order to silence us. So what I wanted to emphasize as a Tigran again is that we have been raising funds, we have been mobilizing funds in order to support the displaced, the people that have been forced and kicked out of their homeland in Tigray after suffering a genocide. So there are a lot of victims. So we do have a responsibility of providing them with humanitarian assistance, and that's what the Tigray community have been doing to date. As regards to other Ethiopians that have been mobilizing funds, I do not know what they do with the money. I know for a fact a lot of lobbying firms have been hired by the Ethiopian government and by members of the Ethiopian community in the diaspora. I don't know if where that money is going to. I do not know. That's why I asked you to ask them instead of me giving you answers that I'm not sure of because I don't have the evidence. I hope that clarifies your question now.
Thank you very much. That does clarify things. Let's talk about the rape issue. I have reported several times on using rape as a weapon in the
Mhm.
Tigray region. I have reported about so many Tigrayan women who not just talked about being raped, but also had many of them were killed actually. And I've featured some Tigrayan women who said that they were raped and their children were killed. I featured a hospital in the Tigrayan region filled with women who said that they had been raped. So I wanted to hear your opinion about this. Also, the other side is saying that the TPLF forces had been using rape even before the war started. But I reported on the rape that was happening when the war started. So, what do you have to say about this?
Can you clarify what you mean by you have reported about rape when the
So
war started?
I reported rape being used as a weapon when the war started,
By
and
whom?
by the military forces. When I
From Ethiopia.
reported this, from what the women said, it was like both sides using rape. But I basically talked about the women's stories because there were videos coming out from these women. But what I'm asking you is to not just talk about rape being used as a weapon to clarify, but also to address when the other side says, oh, the TPLF have been using rape even before the war started.
Okay. So one of the so-called evidence that genocide apologists use in order to consolidate that narrative is that my activism prior to November 4th of 2020. As a Tigray